What's up everybody, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 in the house, bringing to you another edition of the Flash Season 6 review series, and today I'm going to be talking about episode 7, entitled The Last Temptation of Barry Allen. You know, when I just finished watching this, I sat there and said to myself, this could quite possibly be the greatest Flash episode ever. And that's a pretty big statement to make, because ever since the show came out in 2014, for the past 5 years, The Flash has produced so many fantastic episodes. I mean, one of the best episodes, which I still say is one of the best to this day, was The Man in the Yellow Suit, which was the first time we officially saw the Reverse Flash, and him and Barry had that great big chase all around Central City, where he was trying to figure out why he was at his parents' house on the night that his mum was murdered, and that was a really fantastic episode, and it was really, really good, and it really packed a lot of emotion. And then you had the other episode back in season 2, I believe, where it was called Enter Zoom, where Zoom broke Barry's back, and that was absolutely fantastic. And it was very similar to The Dark Knight Rises. But you see, it is very, very tough to say with anything what is the greatest of all time. But I would probably go out and say that this episode is probably the greatest Flash episode of all time. I mean, I would probably put it up there with those two episodes that I just mentioned. If I was to compile my top 3 greatest Flash episodes of all time, this would be number 1, The Man in the Yellow Suit would be number 2, and number 3 would be Enter Zoom. I mean, this episode was just absolutely dark, emotional, powerful, everything you wanted and more, and it really kept you on the edge of your seat from start to finish, especially the last few minutes at the end just completely blew my mind, and it was just absolutely brilliant. So with that all said, I can't wait to talk about this. This is going to be really, really good. So let's talk about episode 7, entitled The Last Temptation of Barry Allen, Part 1. So this episode picks up where we left off at the end of episode 6, where Ramsey jumped Ralph from behind and attacked him. So this is just merely a continuation of what we saw previously. So we see Ralph and Ramsey going at it, and it's very it's like a comic book in some ways, where you see Ralph stretching his body, taking shots at Ramsey. It was a very comic book type of scene, which was good. You know, I really enjoyed this a lot. This was very well put together. The choreography of that scene was not too corny. It was just a very good balance, and the CGI didn't come across as hokey or anything. It was very, very good. So the two of them are going at it, and Ramsey infects Ralph with his bloodwork energy. Now, over the course of this season so far, we have been seeing Ramsey constantly injecting himself with dark matter, and he's feeding on blood to make himself more powerful, so to speak. So it's nasty. I did say in some previous videos that it was disgusting, but you can really, really see that he's just changing at will, and you can really see him getting more and more evil as the show has been progressing. And I have to say, I really enjoyed Ramsey's development into blood work. It's been very, very enjoyable, and this is probably one of the best well-developed villains I've seen for the Flash in quite some time. So this was very, very well done, and I thought they did a really good job with building him up as this evil threat to Barry. Ralph is then brought to Star Labs, where Killer Frost and Cisco are doing everything they can to try and revive him. Killer Frost then reverts back to being Caitlin and uses her medical knowledge. Caitlin then tells Barry to give Ralph a blood transfusion, and it appears to have worked. So Barry begins to worry about how Team Flash are going to cope with him dying in the crisis and its aftermath. He then goes home and finds Ramsey there, or at least a projection of him. Ramsey reveals that he knows Barry is the Flash. He then asks Barry if he plays a role in the upcoming crisis. Barry, of course, denies this involvement. Ramsey then makes Barry hallucinate that the antimatter is coming by projecting the red skies that we have seen in previous episodes of The Flash and Arrow. Barry ultimately wakes up. He then tells Caitlin that the vision of Ramsey felt very real, and he returns home and inspects the entire apartment but finds nothing. He then sees a vision of his mum, aka the Speed Force, taking on his mum's form. She explains that the blood transfusion injected Barry with Ramsey's very essence, which he is using to bend Barry at will. So it looks like Ramsey has already affected Barry Allen with dark matter, so it looks like he's already begun his work on him. Barry then turns around and sees a vision of his friends eating a cooked dinner by Ramsey. Now this scene was really sick but twisted and awesome at the same time. He's feeding them dinner and you see them all eating the dark infected blood. It's disgusting. And Ramsey continues to taunt Barry with all sorts of visions, including one of Nora West Allen as a baby. And Barry goes to grab Nora as a baby and he can't. It's another one of his projections / hallucinations. And you can really see how twisted Ramsey is becoming as this episode progresses. And Ramsey says to Barry that he is the one who's bringing all of these visions to life, as he begins to see Ralph, Joe, Iris and Fawn all taunting him. So this scene just goes completely dark red, and wow, it really gets good, but it's not over yet. Ramsey tells Barry that with his lifeblood, he'll not only be able to survive the crisis, but he'll also be able to bring anyone back in Central City back to life. So it's the ultimate temptation. Very similar to Spider-Man and Venom, which I'll get into very, very shortly. Barry reveals that he's doubting the call of the Speed Force because of his family and his life. The Speed Force tells him that doubt is okay, but persevering is what makes him the Flash. The Speed Force then reveals that everything Ramsey showed Barry was true, but that he shouldn't follow Ramsey's path. We then see Barry at Star Labs as his body begins to shut down. Frost and Cisco take him to Star Labs, but initially struggle to revive him. Now we see Killer Frost go into a panic attack while Barry continues to argue with the Speed Force, and he argues that his abilities aren't worth losing everything he loves. Barry also says that the Speed Force is the one manipulating him, and proceeds to do a reverse flash with the signature vibrating hand through the projection of Nora. Whew! Ho ho! Now, do you know what would have made this scene even more cooler? If we had seen Barry's eyes just for that split second turn red and his voice goes all weird and distorted like Reverse Flash. That would have just been the shit. That would have been the absolute bollocks. So we also see in the real world Cisco finds a vial of Velocity X and prepares to inject Barry with it. The Speed Force tells Barry the the accepting Ramsey's blood will make him lose all of his soul. And the next scene we have is this scene right here. We see the Speed Force and Ramsey pulling Barry, and it just reminded me of Spider-Man and Venom, that famous scene where Peter Parker is fast asleep and we see the black symbiote ooze cover Peter Parker, and we see Venom and Spider-Man in his dream just pulling him in a tug of war. And that scene really brought it to life for me in this moment right here. This was such a cool scene, and wow, it just absolutely blew my mind. And for the next few minutes you see Barry screaming in pain as the Speed Force and Ramsey are fighting for control of Barry Allen's body, and it just, my god, I don't know what to say really. It just was absolutely incredible. I just thought, wow, we are watching a classic right here. I mean, if this doesn't give you chills or goosebumps, I don't know what will. This absolutely was an amazing scene, and you know, Grant Gustin has delivered so many great performances over the course of the show's run, but this could quite possibly be his greatest one yet. I mean, he was absolutely on fire. I mean, even just looking at this shot of him right here, he looks like he's generally screaming in a lot of pain, and wow, I don't really know how any other scene is going to top this, but I would like to see them try. But this scene was just absolutely spot on to perfection. This was absolutely incredible. Mega props to Grant Gustin. He has really matured and grown as an actor. Barry then finally wakes up in the real world and tells Cisco and Frost about being trapped inside his own mind, and decides to spend the final hours before Crisis looking for Ramsey and stopping him. But, however, Iris arrives at Star Labs and talks to Barry and comes to the realisation that it isn't really him. Lana Lang, take notes. Anyway, so she comes to the realisation that it's not really Barry, and Team Flash confront him and find out that he's been possessed by bloodwork. Barry attacks them and speeds away. Now this scene really threw me off here, because it looked like Barry was okay, but Iris straight away figured it out that he's not okay. So yeah, I really enjoyed this a lot. And the last shot we see is Barry in full Flash costume meeting with bloodwork, and he kneels before him with an evil smile on his face, with his eyes turned black and all black ooze dripping out of his mouth. And that's it. And that's how it ends, with to be continued in part 2. Woo! You know, I really enjoyed talking about this a lot. This was a fantastic episode. As I've said at the beginning, this could quite possibly be the greatest Flash episode of all time. It was that good. Everything about it, the shout outs to the Spider-Man Venom tug of war scene, everything about it was just epic beyond words. So with that all said, I'm going to leave this here for you guys. What did you think of episode 7, The Last Temptation of Barry Allen part 1? Did you think it was good? Do you agree with my opinion that this was the greatest Flash episode of all time? Was there any favourites moments that you had in this episode? Leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will return with another edition of the Flash Season 6 review series, where I'll be talking about part 2 of The Last Temptation of Barry Allen. So till then, take care everybody.